Hey, everybody, we will get to our podcast in just a second. But before we get started, I wanted to tell you about something new that we are trying this year here at the Work with Purpose podcast. We are doing a few live stream events in 2024. Yes, you heard me right. Our podcast, the Work with Purpose podcast, we are doing live stream events, and we are calling our live stream events WCT, which means Weekend Career Training. Now, these Weekend Career Training events, they're designed to be a 1-hour live stream event on specific Saturdays. During that time, I'll share a bit more teaching and training about a specific career topic. Plus, it can give you a chance to have your career questions answered. I think you'll love it. I invite you to join me. So bring a cup of coffee, join our next weekend career training live stream. And as you do that, my belief for you is that those events, you being a part of that, will help you continue to take a purposeful step in your career. Now, so join our weekend career training event. Our next one is coming up on Saturday, August 10th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find more details about that at our website, WWPcast.com/live. Again, WWPCast.com/live. When you visit that webpage, you'll be able to fill out our live question form if you want to submit a career question, and you can reserve your spot to attend our next weekend career training live stream. I'm excited to have you join me there. Again, our next weekend career training live stream event, it's coming up on August 10th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Eastern, and you can get details at WWPcast.com/live. Hey everybody, Randy Mahoney here, and thanks for joining us on the Work with Purpose podcast. This month, this episode, we're talking about a little bit of a summer series for you all. This time we're talking about what does it mean to know yourself, 4 steps to a clear career goal. Stick around, that episode of the Work with Purpose podcast, it starts right now. Hey there, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the Work with Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Randy Mahoney Jr., and I'm so glad that you are joining us in today's episode. This month, as we kind of get into our topic, I'm excited to bring it to you because in this episode, we're starting a little bit of a summer series, as I'm calling it, and we're talking more about what does it mean to know yourself really well, 4 parts to a clear career goal. I wanted to put this in front of you in this episode because I had a chance to speak about this topic a little bit more in a career live stream event that I had a chance to do back in April of this year. By the time you are hearing this, it should be in the month of May 2024. In that career live stream event that I did a little bit ago, it was all about getting real help for remote work. If you want to check that out, I really encourage you to do that. It was a really great time with the folks who were there with us, joining us online for that live stream. Take a look in the show notes of this episode. You can find that in your favorite podcast app, wherever you're listening to us, or if you are watching the YouTube version of our show, look in the video description below this video, and you'll see links to that as well. But again, you want to check out that weekend career training live stream event called Real Help for Remote Work. I think if you're looking for a remote job right now, if you're trying to, or if you know somebody who's doing that, it's really popular right now in our U.S. job market and even around the world. So I think that'll give you some practical, actionable steps to get started with that in a purposeful way. But not here promoting the live stream. Today we're talking about knowing yourself really well, 4 parts to a clear career goal. I'm excited to bring this to you. So let's go ahead and get started with that right now. Okay, so when I say the term knowing yourself really well and thinking about knowing yourself for a clear career goal, what am I trying to get at? If you are job searching, or if you're changing careers, or trying to make a next career move, or refresh some things in the work aspect of your life, I really think starting with knowing who you are and more about your skills and some of the aspects I'll talk about in just a second. I think knowing yourself really well is an important place to start because it really helps you down the line as you get into the other steps of a job search process, as you're researching companies, as you're developing career documents like your resume, as you're preparing for interviews, and even thinking about how are you talking about your skills, how are you talking about your experiences. If you're starting from a place of you're knowing yourself really, really well and you're really familiar with those aspects that I'll talk about in a second, I really think that it'll help you further down the line in your job search. So let's break those down real quick. Knowing yourself well can be broken down into 4 different aspects, and we'll talk through those right now. So those 4 aspects of knowing yourself are: number 1, your background and your experiences; number 2, understanding your work values; number 3, understanding your interests in a job. And what I mean by that is your vocational interests, and that's tied to the RIASEC theory of career development. And then number 4 is growing in being aware of your understanding of your abilities, your strengths, and your giftedness. Hey everybody, Randy here. We'll get back to this episode of the Work with Purpose podcast in just a moment, but I want to take a quick pause and just remind you that if you have career topics that you want us to talk about here on this episode, if you've got a specific career question that you want us to have answered on a podcast, on a video on our YouTube channel or other social platforms, I want to invite you to fill out our live and career question form. If you want to fill out our career question form, you can go to our website, WWPCast.com/ask, and you can fill out our live career question form and put in your questions that you want us to try to answer there. Again, you can fill out our live and career question form at our website, absolutely free, WWPcast.com/ask. And now, back to the show. So let's talk through those 4. Number 1, your background and your experience. Now, I realize in my work as a career coach, a podcaster, and working over 7 years now in the field of career development, working with adults and in higher education and lots of different experience with that, I realize that every person that I have the chance to work with in career kinds of conversations, every person is going to have different experiences in different parts of their background. So I'm not going to try to nail down, what it might look like for someone on this career path. But why I would say I want you to start with, if you're trying to figure out, if you're engaging in a job search and you want to figure out, how can I really review again or learn again more about myself, is to really think backwards and think about where you've been before. That's what this experience part is understanding, where have you worked before? What industries have you been in? What skills have you developed? What education or training do you have? All of those elements are part of your experience. And the other thing I would say too is why understanding your experience can be important, or at the least being aware of it, or where you've been, reviewing it again. Why that's important is because if you're trying to change industries, or if you're trying to change careers, one of the key things that I share about with individuals who are in a job search or who are working through a career change is a lot of times your past background, education, and experience, it will give you clues into what some of your transferable skills are, or what some of your overlapping skills that you've developed and you've grown over time, those skills that transfer from one industry or one field to another. And understanding your transferable skills and knowing more about that is something that's really valuable when you are trying to change career fields or change industries and move into that. It's really being aware of your background and your experience. So that's the first one. Let's talk next about work values. Now, if you've not heard about work values before, I'll take a look at some research as when I'm sharing this episode. But if you look in the show notes on this episode, I'll work to link to a resource that I have on the work values that I believe it's a career tutorial that I did a couple years ago, and it's really great. I encourage you to check that out. Look in the description below this video if you're watching us on YouTube, or look in the show notes for on your favorite podcast app. You can check that out there. But work values, I'll give kind of a high level here. Work values are more of an advanced way of how you think about what's important to you in a specific job or a specific company. Now, there are a lot of different work values that are out there. For example, A common one is recognition. That would mean if that was important to you as a job seeker or career changer, if you had a high work value of recognition, it would matter to you that if you did a good job, that you had some sort of, being recognized for it, like whether it's a handwritten note or, all company email with your name and information in it to kind of be celebrated. It's recognition. Other ones that are there are support, meaning that it would be important to you to have supportive and relationships with your supervisor or with the leaders in your company. So having kind of those intentional that you feel like your boss has your back or your company has your best interest in your back in mind. Other ones, as far as work values, that I've seen sometimes for more kind of blue collar work is things like working conditions or employment. So having, steady employment throughout the year, that can show up sometimes in work values. Working conditions, having a safe environment to work in that you can kind of do your best work and then it's in a healthy environment, things like that. So that's a little bit about work values. So that's the first two aspects of knowing yourself really well, your background and your experience and your work values. Let's jump into the third aspect of knowing yourself really well. Next, the third aspect of knowing yourself really well, trying to develop a clear career goal for yourself is understanding your interests in a job. And what I mean by that is more along the lines of your vocational interests in a job. And that comes from a really well-known theory of career development called the RIASEC theory. It's spelled RIASEC, RIASEC theory. It was developed by a person in the field of career development, a vocational psychologist named Dr. John Holland. I believed he called that his theory of vocational choice. But really, to kind of boil that down for our episode here, the RIASEC theory of career development, it talks through the RIASEC letters, the RIASEC. Each of those letters stands for a specific character trait or personality trait that Dr. John Holland would say every person has. So let me walk you through those 6 values, those 6 personality traits really quick. So the R stands for realistic. You might see that more in someone who likes to work with their hands or work with things rather than ideas. I is investigative, which is a lot more with thinking and problem solving using your mind, things like that. A is artistic, so it could mean that somebody with this value, you might be naturally drawn or have a natural ability in more artistic kinds of fields like drawing, painting, animation, illustration. But at the same time, artistic can also show up in that you might be somebody who is okay not having as much set structure or set steps to follow to kind of produce your work or complete your tasks. The S stands for social. So social, a lot of times this aspect of someone, social would mean you might like to teach or train people on how to do things. A lot of times for individuals that I've worked with who've wanted to go into nursing or education, teaching, social can kind of show up also. Social can also show itself in that it might mean that you are someone who likes to really show compassion or really serve and help and give back to your community, back to, a certain people group, so along like social work kinds of things, social services kinds of stuff. A lot of times somebody with a draw to those types of career fields usually would have would have social as a top value if they were to do a RIASEC career kind of assessment. So those are the first couple. E stands for enterprising. I've seen this a lot for folks who want to go and to do their own business or entrepreneurial types of things. Enterprising would mean for someone, as an example, that you might be somebody who likes to start and finish a lot of new projects one after the other. So again, entrepreneurialism is entrepreneurship is something that I've seen a lot with somebody with that value. And then the last one is C for conventional. Conventional is kind of the polar opposite of the artistic value. So that would mean that you would be somebody who really has a draw, would say that as an employee, as a staff member, you might say that you see yourself as most successful when you've got that set structure of first I do this, second I do this, and then after I do all those different steps, here's what my final product is supposed to look like. So very much inside of needing structure, needing order, proper policies, proper procedures, and things like that in order to do your best work. When I've worked with individuals, sometimes I have seen this value be a really top one for someone who wants to go into fields like accounting or human resources or some aspects of business. Hi, everyone. Randy Mahoney here, career coach and host of the Work with Purpose podcast. I want to take a quick moment here and tell you about my free ebook that I've made just for you called the Job Search Checklist. Now, from being a career coach for over 6 years, from my years of personal job searching and helping many adults make more informed career choices, I am well aware that job searches can often take a long time, and sometimes they can end up with you facing a lot of frustration. In the Job Search Checklist ebook, you'll get a 6-step process that I believe will help you know what to prepare for as you start your job search. Also, I believe the Job Search Checklist will help you know if you're on the right track to find a new job, or it can help you change direction to a more intentional job search. So, what are you waiting for? Stop being confused and get a clear path forward. Get my free ebook, The Job Search Checklist, right now. You can get that by visiting our website, www.pcast.com/job-search-checklist. Again, you can get your free Job Search Checklist ebook by visiting www.pcast.com/job-search-checklist. And now, back to the show. And so that's the third aspect of knowing yourself really well, of trying to get to a clear career goal, is understanding your vocational interests in a job. And that's really pulled from the RIASEC theory of career development, again, RIASEC. If you look in the show notes of our episode, I'll work to include a link for that theory a little bit more so that you can explore that as you'd like to. And then the fourth and last aspect of what I would say to you is important of knowing yourself really well to start, getting on your way to having a clear career goal in mind as you're wanting to get into a job search or change careers. That fourth aspect is you really being aware, familiar with your unique abilities, your strengths, and your giftedness. Now, a lot of this will vary from person to person. When I think about how can someone really understand their strengths, their abilities, and their giftedness, there's a lot of great resources that are out there. For as long as I've been in the field of career development, I am personally a fan, and I've recommended and used resources from the Gallup organization. I'll put a link for them in the show notes so you can check those out. They do a lot of research on effective organizations and employee engagement and strengths specifically. They have a lot of great resources there. They have some different assessments and things like that. That's one resource that definitely can help. But when it comes to abilities, strengths, and giftings, I would say for you, it's really thinking about, and this might also show up in as you think on your past work background, your past education, your past experience. Things like, what skills have you developed over time? What technology platforms or technology tools do you know how to use? What new skills have you worked to develop? What new technologies have you engaged in for your industry? What are things or actions that you would say come naturally to you, that as you engage in those, time seems to kind of pass away, or it seems almost effortless to you? So some of how you'd answer some of those reflection types of questions, those can give you some clues into what might be, some of your natural or developed abilities, some of your natural strengths or how you develop those over time, and some of your natural giftedness. Answering some of those questions of what skills have you developed, what technologies have you worked into. A third aspect for that, if you're trying to think through what your abilities and your skills and your giftings are, is you could reach out to a trusted person. It could be a relative, it could be a family member, it could be a career coach such as myself, or someone else who you personally connect with. Some person who knows you well, who can give you kind of that balanced approach of what your skills might be. And I suggest that as a possible resource for you to help you learn about your abilities or be familiar with your abilities and your giftedness and strengths. Because so often, and I've lived this and I'm sharing this with you as I've worked with folks who've gone into a job search or changing careers, that crucible of a job search process, it can be very mentally and emotionally taxing. It can often be filled with rejections and no's from an employer. And so a lot of times having some of those trusted people around you to help affirm or help remind you of where you've succeeded before, what your background has been, what types of things you've said have been important to you in your job and things like that, what some of your giftedness are, your strengths are. Those types of folks can definitely help. So real quick, just to recap, the four parts that we talked about today of knowing yourself really well to be on your way of having a clear career goal. Those four parts are: number one, being aware of your background, your experience. That's like your education, work history, things like that. Number two, we said it's important for you to know your work values. Number three, we said it's important to really know yourself. You've got to really understand what are your interests in a job or your vocational interests. And we said that came from the RIASEC theory of career development. And then number four, it's also important to be aware of, be familiar with, again, your abilities, your strengths, and your giftedness. So I hope that kind of a little walkthrough of those aspects of knowing yourself really well, I hope you found it useful. Hope you find it encouraging and helpful to kind of help you see either for the first time or for the first time in a long time what skills you have and what abilities you have that you can really take stock of those and use that to make a purposeful and effective job search if you're looking right now, or a career change, or even if you might not be in a job search right now, you can share this episode with someone who might need it. So again, that brings up a really good point. If you found this episode helpful, I encourage you, wherever you're engaging with this episode, consider hitting the like button. If you're watching us on the YouTube version of our show, consider hitting the like button, subscribe button. If you're watching us on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, I invite you, consider sharing this episode, sharing the link to that with someone. When you do that, it allows new folks to connect with our show and get encouraging and educational career content like we're trying to produce for you with each episode. So consider sharing that with someone else, and just know that as you listen to this episode, as you take action on what you are learning about, and even as you extend it and share it with someone else, just know you doing those actions, that's you working and living as a purposeful person. And that's really what our podcast is about, really trying to help adults become more purposeful people and work with purpose in their career, and doing that by giving you career advice, education, and encouragement. So again, if you find this episode helpful, I encourage you to consider sharing it with someone. Consider connecting with us on our social platforms, like, subscribe. If you're on your podcast app, we would love a 5-star review from you. Just if you find it helpful, if you find it encouraging, we appreciate that. For sure. So as we kind of wrap up this month's episode, I want to say a couple things. Number one, thank you so much for engaging with this episode. I realize you could do so many different things as you go about your day-to-day life. Thanks for joining in with us for this episode. Hope you found it purposeful and encouraging and helpful. And at the same time, I want to invite you as well, if you find this episode helpful, consider supporting our work to keep the career content going. The show is not free for us to produce. It costs us a lot to put live stream events on and other career information out there for you. So if you want to consider checking out our other career resources or giving to support our work so we can keep our podcast and career content items going, you can visit our website, WWPCast.com/shop. Again, consider supporting our work at WWPcast.com/shop. We appreciate you considering that. So again, as we kind of wrap up here, thanks so much for listening to this month's episode of the Work with Purpose podcast. And until our next episode, I'm your host, Randy Mahoney Jr. And as we wrap up, I want to remind you of two things. Number one, you've been made with purpose, so you should work with purpose. And then number two is this: the best work that you can ever do is serving others from your unique skills and gifts and strengths, and doing all that for the glory of Jesus Christ. We'll see you next time.